Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's take a look at the similarities and differences between the File, Duplicate, and File, Save As functions. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So I often find that people are confused about the differences between using File Duplicate and File Save As. They do very similar things and they basically can be used interchangeably as long as you understand how they're similar and how they're different. So here I've got a document that I've just created in TextEdit. I'm going to use TextEdit as an example, but most standard Mac apps will work the same way with their documents. Let's first save this document here. So I'm going to go to File, Save, and notice since I haven't saved the document yet, Save has 3 dots after it. So that means it's going to prompt me for more information before it can complete that command. In this case, it doesn't know what I want to call the file since I've never saved it before, so it's going to prompt me for that. So I'm going to save it to this Files folder that we can see right here, and I'll just call it Test. So now I've got the file saved there and I still have it open. Now I can go and use the File Duplicate function here to create a second copy of it. But I can also use File Save As. If you hold the Option key down, Duplicate changes to Save As. So the keyboard shortcut is the same. Just add the Option key. Years ago, Save As was the standard. Duplicate replaced it, but Save As was always there as the option. But you'll find that some third-party applications may have stuck with Save As, and some may actually include both here in the menu without holding the Option key. So let's look at the similarities between the two of them. Both of them will essentially create a duplicate file of the document that you're working on. So here I'm working on test.rtf. If I go to File, Duplicate, I now have a second copy of that. It gives even a suggested name here, and I could use that or I could change it to something else. It's called Test2, and you can see it creates that file there. It actually saves it the first time. And now I've got 2 identical versions of the file so far. If I instead use Save As, it will prompt me right here in a Save dialog for a new name. So I'll create the new file there, save, and you can see I again have 2 identical copies of the file. Another way in which they're both similar is the version history. So here in the original I can go to File and Revert To and go to Previous Save, Browse All Versions. If I were to create a duplicate of this, then this new file here actually doesn't have any version saved, even though the original one does. And the same thing if I use Save As. I create this new version of the file here, and now I'm editing the new version of the file, and I could see here and there are no previous saves of this new version. But if I go back to the old version here, I can see there are. So how do these differ? Well, one primary way in which they differ is that with Duplicate you end up with both the original version open here in one window and the new version in another window. So you've got 2 windows open, old version, new version. If you use Save As, you save that file, you only have one window open. It has the new version of the file. The old version is still there, but it's no longer an open document. You would have to open it manually again to get to it. The second way in which these differ is when you choose the new name for the file. So if I go to File, Duplicate, you can see it's prompting me right here to put a new name right now, but I could skip that. I could just go right here into Editing and it's still untitled. And if I go to File, Save, you can see it gives me 3 dots there, meaning it's unsaved right now. And the first time I go to save, it's going to prompt me for a file name. However, if I use File, Save As, it immediately prompts me for a file name right here. So I have to actually save it right at the beginning, and now I'm editing the new document that's already been saved. So there's no way to actually start editing the document until it's been saved. Another difference is what happens to unsaved changes in the original document. So here I am in the original document. I will create a new line, but I haven't saved yet. I haven't used Command S or File Save. Now if I go to Duplicate, I have that new line in both documents. However, you can see here right at the top the original document just shows that it's edited. This change hasn't been saved. Now whether this gets saved depends on system preferences. Under General, if you look here, there's Ask to keep changes when closing documents. So if you have that turned off, then it really doesn't matter because everything auto saves. If I close this document, it will save it and any changes I made will be saved. But if I have this turned on, then it's going to ask to keep changes. So now if I go to close this document, it will prompt me whether or not I want to save the changes or forget about the changes since the last save. Now what about File, Save As? Well, if I do Save As, give the new file name there, I've switched over to the new document. So what happened to the changes in the old document? Well, if I double click on it, I'll see that indeed it saved them. And the way that happened was a little checkbox that you can easily miss. So let's take a step back here and you can see I've made that change. It says it's edited. Let me go to File, Save As. And if I look closely, there's a checkbox here for Keep Changes in Original Document. So if I have that checked, and it is by default, when it closes the original document to create the new one, it will keep the changes. So if I turn that off and then I save with the new name, you can see I'm in the new document. It has that new line there. But if I go back to the original, you can see it didn't save the changes. So it's a way to actually make changes to a document. Realize you don't want to have those changes applied to the current document, but you instead want to create a new one. That's how to do it. So if it still sounds a little confusing, that's because the functionality really is that close. In most cases, you can use either duplicate or save as to accomplish any goal that you want. But sometimes you don't need to use either one of those to accomplish a goal. For instance, if you go to File, there's Rename right here, and you can rename a file while it's open. Years and years ago, you wouldn't want to do this. You would want to close a file, rename it in the Finder, and then open up the now renamed file. But now you can just rename the file while you're working on it, even in the app. And you could do the same thing with Move To. You can choose a new location for that file to be saved while the file is open. It will actually move it while you're working on it. So in some cases, you may think that Save As is what you want, but actually just renaming or moving the actual current file, not creating a copy of it, is what you want. You can also do both of those things here in the title bar in most apps. Click on the title bar, you can change the name, and you can actually change where it's saved, even choosing Other, choose any location. Another reason to use duplicate or save as is if you've created a document that's a starting point, maybe for a task you do every week, and you want to create a new version of that file every week. If that's the case, there are other options you can use as well. Select a file and then use File, Get Info, or Command I. You can change it to a stationery pad. What a stationery pad is when you open the file, it immediately creates a duplicate of it. And you can see it just names it with the word copy here, and it opens up the duplicate. The original file isn't actually opened at all. So it's the equivalent to opening the file and then choosing Save As to save a new copy of it, save it, and now you're working on that new file. And it prevents you from accidentally making the mistake of altering the original. On the other hand, if you select the file and choose Locked, then it works in a different way. You can open the file and you're now working on the original, but it says Locked at the top. You can't make changes to it. As soon as I try to make changes, it's going to ask me to duplicate the file. So you can only make changes to the duplicate. You can never change the original as long as it's locked. And of course, that's very similar to using template functionality inside of an app. For instance, in Pages, you can save your own templates and open them up to create new files as well. So depending upon the app you're using, making a template to use may be the way to go rather than using a stationery pad or locking the file. So I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.